Okay, so this is my first YouTube show about the Baltimore Orioles. We're about halfway through the spring training schedule right now, and it looks like, well, from what people can see, the Orioles haven't done so well. They're 2-11-2 right now, which means they have 2 wins, 11 losses, and 2 ties. They had a nice comeback win yesterday. They were trailing by a few runs going to the bottom of the 8th inning, and they ended up scoring 3 runs in the bottom of the 8th, and they ended up winning 8-7. But that was just their second win of the spring, and for all intents and purposes, people are really kind of concerned about what's going on with the starting rotation. Gallardo's given up 5 or 6 home runs in just 2 starts in the Grapefruit League. Ubaldo Jimenez got roughed up in his first start, and he's pitched pretty well the last 2 starts since then, but gave up 7 runs or 6 runs in a third of an inning in his first Grapefruit League start. Said he was just working on stuff and felt good, but, you know, it remains to be seen which Ubaldo you're going to get this year. Miguel Gonzalez is the one who gives us the most concern, I'd have to say. If you look back to last year, Bud Norris really struggled in spring training, and he, everybody was saying that he was going to do okay in the regular season. He was a 15-game winner, about a mid-3s ERA the year before. So everybody just fully expected that he was just kind of working on things in the spring, and he would come back and end up doing okay for the team during the 2015 regular season. Well, the problem with Norris is he didn't do that. He took his struggles from spring training, and they carried over into the regular season. And they say he was sick, he was hurt. Either way, he didn't perform for the team. I'm afraid we're seeing much of the same with Miguel Gonzalez this year. He gave up, I think it was 6 runs in his first start. No, it was 7 runs in his first start. He gave up 6 runs his past start, and he had an average or mediocre start in between. You have to really start to wonder. I mean, this is a guy who was plucked out of the Mexican League a few years ago. You have to wonder if he's just kind of been figured out. He's going out there, and not only is he getting shelled, he's walking guys. You know, he had I think he had 3 walks in his start the other day. This is somebody who's penciled in as the number 5 starter on your club. I don't think he's the pitcher that pitched to a 3.23 ERA or so in 2014. I don't necessarily think he's the 4.91 guy from last year either. And I don't expect him to go out and give up 6 or 7 runs a start like he's been doing this spring once the regular season starts. But I think there is some cause for concern. I've been an advocate this year. I haven't really spoken out much about it simply because he got hurt in the first game of the spring. But I was thinking, maybe you should give Brian Mattis a chance to win a spot in the starting rotation. Of course, he didn't really do himself any favors by getting hurt in his first inning of action this spring. But last year, he had a career-best ERA. It was sub-3. He held right-handed batters to a 243 batting average, which was the lowest of his career to this point. The big knock against him was he could get lefties out, but he can't get righties out, and that's why he's become a lefty specialist. This is a guy who was taken in the top 10 picks in the first round in 2007, and he's relegated to a lefty specialist role. I say you have 1 year left of him under team control before he becomes a free agent. Give him every chance to start. Maybe you have an Arrieta. I don't think you have an Arrieta in him, but if you can get a quality major league start out of him, maybe that's somebody who you can look to in the future to be part of your rotation. You have that big question mark. I mean, the Orioles don't really have a starter that can go after the 5 that they have penciled in. Right now you're looking at Chris Tillman, who's probably getting the ball on opening day. That's probably going to be Gallardo right after him, then Jimenez, then Gausman, then Gonzalez. I think Gonzalez is such a big question mark right now, and without him, you're looking at guys like Vance Worley, Mike Wright, Tyler Wilson. Tyler Wilson, I think, has the best makeup. I think he has the best head on his shoulders out of everybody on that particular team that could be a starter. But I don't think he has the best stuff. Mike Wright, I think that he got figured out. I think he's good one time through the order. But after that, I think that he's just a guy that people know what he's going to throw you after the first time through. I think Mike Wright is destined for a late inning setup role, maybe a closer down the line somewhere. If not with the Orioles, maybe with somebody else. Maybe he ends up being trade bait. You never know. I think, Vance Worley's out of options. He's here. He got picked up from the Pirates this year. I know that he's had success as a starter, and I know he's had success as a reliever. The problem is there isn't a lot of space for him in the bullpen right now. Your bullpen's pretty much set, barring injury. You don't want to say that the guy's ever happy that a pitcher gets injured, but with Mattis going down, I mean, that gave Worley a better shot of making the bullpen. That being said, Mattis seems to be on a pretty quick road to recovery. He just threw a bullpen session, 25 pitches yesterday, and they're looking at him maybe getting back on the mound in the next week or two, which is only going to hurt the case for Vance Worley. I mean, unless the Orioles really take a look at Brian Mattis as a starting pitcher, I think Worley is kind of pushed out, and there's a chance he could be released, designated for assignment. I mean, you never know what's going to happen with this team. Moving on, the offense really hasn't started clicking too much. I mean, you're getting good at bats out of Manny Machado. Ryan Flaherty's had an incredible spring, hitting over 400. He's walked a bunch of times. He's showing a lot of promise. And you have to remember, this guy's a former first-round pick also. They just picked up Pedro Alvarez. And a couple people on my Facebook page, namely Nick Perez, asked me why the Orioles would go out and get Pedro Alvarez. And this was a move that I was pretty much against from the first time he got mentioned in the offseason. I thought that he was, a poor man's version of Chris Davis. Doesn't bring you a lot defensively. Probably only hurts your team defensively, even if he's never in the field. We'll get to that in a second. I wasn't the biggest fan of the move. However, from all reports, this guy is a great clubhouse presence. He's a good teammate. He's going to hit for a ton of power. His first at bat of the spring, he smoked the ball off the right center field wall for an RBI double. But it's feast or famine with him, just like a lot of the Orioles lineup. He's going to hit a ton of home runs, and he's going to strike out a ton. This is a guy who averages 177 strikeouts per season throughout his entire career. Now, he also has 2 30-home run seasons under his belt, and he led the National League in home runs in 2013 with 36, which is kind of a small number to lead the league. I guess you can really tell we're out of the steroid era now, huh? Having said that, the more I think about it, the more he plays. I'm okay with the move simply because the Orioles have a right-handed heavy lineup, and he's a lefty power bat. And he's probably going to DH. They're probably going to hide his glove in Sarasota. I don't foresee him doing too much in the field. If he plays 30 games in the field, I think he'll be lucky. I think that the less games he plays in the field is better for the club and for the fans alike. But you already have, you have 3 premier power-hitting first basemen on your team. When I say premier, I don't mean that they're upper echelon players in the league, but I mean these are guys who can all hit 30-plus home runs. We're talking about Chris Davis, Mark Trumbo, and then Pedro Alvarez, of course. The Alvarez move pushes Trumbo from a DH role into an outfielder role, and that's something that I don't think anybody really wanted to see. I think that we were better served going out and getting an actual outfielder who has a lot of experience, has a pedigree for good defensive play. Now, Trumbo, believe it or not, has played more games in right field than any other position in his career. So he has the experience out there, and from what Buck Showalter says, he has a great arm out there. But I can't see him being the greatest outfielder. I think you're looking at something along the lines of a Nelson Cruz or Delman Young as far as defensive capabilities. But, if this guy comes in and does what Cruz did for the Orioles in 2014, I don't think it's really going to matter. It hurt the Orioles a lot that Dexter Fowler spurned them. It was reported he had a 3-year, $32, $33 million deal with the Orioles, pending a physical. From what Adam Jones says, they were texting back and forth. He said he was on his way to Sarasota. He was looking forward to joining the ball club. And the next day, we see that he signs a 1-year deal with the Cubs, and he's at the Cubs spring training facilities hugging his teammates in the middle of the diamond. I don't know what happened there. I don't think anybody really knows what happened there. I think Dexter knows, and I think the Orioles brass knows. I think there was a holdup in the contract based on the opt-out clause. The Orioles don't do opt-out clauses, and Fowler was looking for a one-year opt-out clause. And the Orioles weren't willing to give him that opt-out clause and surrender a draft pick, because basically you're just giving up a draft pick to sign this guy, a first-round draft pick, and on top of that, you're then giving this guy the right to walk away if he has a great season this year. So either you're hoping that he has a mediocre to bad season just so you can keep him for the next 2 years, or you're hoping you get the most out of him that you can for 1 year, he helps you win a championship, and then he moves on. I understand where the Orioles are coming from. I don't really see how an opt-out clause is beneficial to the team. But unfortunately, in this day and age, an opt-out clauses are the price of doing business. It's something that you kind of have to do if you want to get the players. You look at Scott Kazmir, he got a one-year opt-out clause in his 3-year contract, so he gets to opt out after the first year. I think David Price got an opt-out. I know Wei-Yin Chen got an opt-out from the Marlins after 2 years. Yoenis Cespedes, perfect example. He signs a 3-year, $75 million deal with the New York Mets, but he gets an opt-out after the first year. So if he goes out and hits .310 with 35 home runs and 120 RBIs, he's going to walk away, even though he's got $27 million on the table for the next 2 years after this season. To me, it's not good for the team, but like I said, it's the cost of doing business in Major League Baseball in 2016. It's something that maybe the Orioles need to reconsider. Like I said, I'm not the biggest fan of it, but maybe they need to reconsider it. You look at the Orioles lineup as it stands right now, though, and this is a team that has the potential to hit a record amount of home runs. You look at the Orioles from 1997, they hit 257 home runs as a ball club, which set a major league record at that point. They had 9 guys in their starting lineup who all hit 20 or more home runs. You can actually see the picture on the wall behind me towards the top of my wall. That's the 9 guys that hit the 20 home runs. Now, a couple of those guys didn't hit all their home runs for the Orioles, but still, I think they had 7 regulars that played the full season for the team to hit 20 plus. They have a chance to best that this year. And I think they have a chance to pass the 97 Mariners, who set the Major League record for 264 home runs. That's a team that had guys like Alex Rodriguez, Ken Griffey Jr., Jay Buhner, Edgar Martinez on it. The Orioles have a shot at beating that. They have 6 guys in their lineup this year, in their everyday lineup, that have hit 30 home runs in the season. They have a guy like Jonathan Scope, who 2 years ago in a full season he had 16 home runs, and then last year basically what amounted to half of a season because of the collision at second base with Boston. In 86 games he had 15 home runs last year, and he hit, I think, 279 last season. This is a guy who's about to take off. I think he could be an all-star this year. I think you could see 30 to 35 home runs out of Scope. This is a guy who might be on the same path as Manny Machado, where you see glimpses of power, glimpses of having a better average, and then one season he just puts it all together and has an MVP-like season. I don't know that Scope is ever going to have an MVP-like season, but I think that this is a guy that's going to hit you 25 to 30 home runs this year, maybe 35 as a ceiling, if he stays healthy, if he plays 150 to 160 games, and he produces like he did last year on the same pace. He's going to do a lot of damage. Speaking of that lineup, J.J. Hardy is a guy who he's finally healthy this year. The last 2 years, in 2014, he had back issues. He hit 268 that year, but he only hit about, I want to say it was 10 home runs, maybe 11, or I think it was 12 home runs maybe that year. I know he doesn't have 20 combined over the last 2 years, and last year I think he hit below 220 on the season because he had a torn labrum in, I think it was his non-throwing shoulder. It was in his left shoulder, and it sapped all of his power, sapped his just batting abilities in general. He said this offseason that he's 100% for the first time in a couple of seasons, and this is the best he's ever felt. And you can really see it in his at-bats this spring. In the few games that the Orioles have had televised so far this spring, the ball is jumping off his bat. Smashed a triple to center field over the center fielder's head a few games ago. he's even making loud outs. The ball is making a resonating sound off the bat. I think it's a good sign this year. I don't know that J.J. Hardy is ever going to be a 20 home run guy again, but I think he's primed to have a really nice bounce back year. You could see him hitting 260 to 270 with maybe 15 home runs, and he's going to provide you with that Gold Glove defense. That type of production from your shortstop, I mean, there aren't that many great shortstops in the game anymore. I mean, you're looking at, Troy Tulowitzki is clearly the best shortstop in the American League and maybe in baseball. Well, Carlos Correa is a good shortstop too, but he's young. Troy Tulowitzki has a track record of doing it year in and year out when he's healthy. I think J.J. Hardy has a chance to be a top 5 shortstop in the American League. With the lineup that the Orioles already have, I think he just makes them that much better. So, I mean, you're looking at a lineup that's going to have Trumbo's going to hit over 30. Scope is going to hit over 20. You're looking at Jones probably about close to 30. Machado, I don't know that Machado's ever going to hit 35 home runs again, but he's either going to hit 30 or he's going to hit 40. You can look at a guy like Josh Donaldson, who hit, 29 home runs 2 years ago, and then last year took off, hit 42 home runs and won an MVP. Machado could do that. Same thing with Nolan Arenado. Showed glimpses of power, and then last year hit over 40. So Machado could do something like that. I think you're going to get a ton of home runs out of this lineup. Unfortunately, on the other end of the spectrum, you're also going to get a ton of strikeouts out of this lineup. I don't know that they're going to set a major league record for strikeouts, but the starting 9 is projected to have over 900 strikeouts alone, and that doesn't even include bench players. So maybe the Orioles hit 270, 280 home runs this year, but they probably also strike out about 1,100 times, which, like I said, feast or famine. It's hard to swallow a strikeout with the bases loaded as a completely unproductive out. I mean, it's better than grounding into a double play, but what concerns me about it is the fact that maybe the numbers for running and scoring position suffer again. Last year, the Orioles were on fire at the beginning of the year. They were leading the American League in batting average with runners in scoring position, and then they hit below 100 in July. And just after June, the numbers for runners in scoring position were dismal. I think they were still top 5 in that category in the American League for the season, but that's because they started out so hot. And you can just look at a guy like Jimmy Paredes. You can look at his numbers in the first half compared to the second half, and it mirrors what the Orioles did. It's identical to what the whole team did. So the lineup is probably going to score a ton of runs. They're probably going to leave you wanting more at times too. They live and die by the home run. You hope they were going to get better this year with the on-base percentage, which is something that they said they were going to make a priority in the offseason, just like they said starting pitching, and they didn't really make on-base percentage a priority, with the exception of Hyun-Soo Kim. They didn't really add anybody to the team that's going to get on base at a 360 clip. And we all know the story with Kim. He started the season 0 for 23. I mean, right now he's got a 3-game hitting streak. But he hasn't really proven that he's the guy we need starting in left field. They did pick up a guy in the role 5 in Joey Rickard. Hit over 300 last year at a few different levels in the minors. Has a great on-base percentage. I think it was over 390 last year. Just overall, in his minor league career, has a great on-base percentage. Buck and Dan love this guy. They've been talking about him a lot. If you watched the game last Thursday on Masson, they interviewed Buck. I think it was in the 2nd or 3rd inning, and they were talking to him about Rickard, and Buck was saying they think that they may have gotten him on a steal. This is a guy who could be coming into his own right now. Speedy guy, young, plays the outfield. He can play all 3 outfield positions. He can steal a few bags. I think he's going to make the roster. I think that the addition of Pedro Alvarez onto the team pretty much ensured that Rickard's going to be on the squad, because he can be a defensive replacement in the late innings for Trumbo out in right field. He can play any of the 3 outfield positions, give Cam or Jones or Trumbo a spell here and there. You don't really know what to expect out of him because he doesn't really have major league experience, but this is a guy who you never know. He could be a diamond in the rough who you start him, you like what you see, and then at the end of the year, the next thing you know, he's hitting 260 with a 330, 340 on base percentage. I want to temper my enthusiasm a little bit there. I don't think that he's going to do that. I think he does stay on the team. I think that they like what he brings. I think he stays on the team this year. I don't expect him to be an everyday player. I don't expect him to start much. I would expect him to probably play in over 100 games just because he'll come in as a defensive replacement late. I think it really remains to be seen what he's going to do, but I think that everybody has reason to be excited about him. I think that this could be a guy who at some point in his career, if the Orioles hang on to him all season this year, becomes a key player for them, maybe even a starter down the road. We'll see. Getting back to the rotation in the bullpen, really, the Orioles said in their end of the season press conference that, yeah, they were going to try and address on base percentage, which they didn't really do. They said they were going to try to address starting pitching, which they also really didn't do. It took them till spring training had started to sign Gallardo. It was originally a 3-year deal, hit a snag because of some concerns over his medicals, so they changed it to a 2-year deal for $22 million with an option for a 3rd year. He said in the press conference, said all the right things, sounded like a great teammate, sounded like a good guy, said that he wanted to be here all along because the Orioles showed interest in him from the beginning, never waned from that interest, and he could tell they really wanted him, so you want to play for a team that wants you to play for him. So like I said, he said all the right things. He hasn't been too great this spring so far, giving up a lot of home runs, both against the Phillies, oddly enough. Hopefully he's just getting his work in and he'll start pitching better as we get closer to the season. But other than him and, like I said earlier, Vance Worley, they really didn't address the starting rotation, and you have to be concerned because Chris Tillman's coming off a bad year. Gonzalez coming off a bad year. Ubaldo had a decent year, but not decent for a guy who's getting paid $12 or $13 million a year. This is a guy the Orioles signed him for, stuff that he's done in the past. He's overdue for another really good year, like he had in 2013. Like he had in 2010 when he was the early on favorite for the Cy Young the first half of the year. They need him to be that guy. They're expecting Kevin Gausman to take the next step. You have a lot of ifs in the starting rotation. You have Tillman, who showed up to camp this year in the best shape of his life. Of course, everybody says every spring, I'm in the best shape of my life, but the past 2 springs, if you've ever seen pictures of him, he had a gut, like he was skinny fat, showing up to camp. This year, apparently he showed up with abs. I don't know that he had abs, but definitely a flatter stomach, looked to be in better shape. Had a little setback with an injury there, but they're hoping that with the hip injury, but he's making a start today in Dunedin against the Blue Jays. Big start for him. He's facing most of their regulars. Last year in 6 starts against the Blue Jays, he went 0-4 with a whip above 2 and an ERA approaching 12. So this is a big start to see where he is physically, to see how he's going to do this season. Wouldn't be surprised to see him get roughed up. Wouldn't be surprised to see him pitch okay. Also, he is a big factor in what the Orioles are going to do this year. Is he the guy who pitched to really good ERAs from 2012 through 2014? Or is he the guy last year put up an ERA close to 5? His last start of the season, he went 7 innings, gave up 2 runs against the Blue Jays, surprisingly enough, considering his failures for most of the season against them. You have to wonder which guy you're getting. I, for one, am inclined to think that they're getting the guy who pitched really well for them the previous 3 seasons. I think that he started to kind of get on track last year. He had a 7-start stretch, or he had a stretch where he won 7 consecutive games with a 3.38 ERA, and then he hurt his ankle, missed about 2 weeks, came back, and never really got back into the groove until the end of the season when the Orioles were out of the running for the playoffs, and it was too late. So you're really hoping and praying for a bounce back from him. Kevin Gausman, the time is now. This guy's going to be in the rotation from day one. No more shuttles back and forth between Baltimore and Norfolk. This guy's in the rotation, and they're planning on getting 30 to 33 starts out of him. Is he the guy who you picked 4th overall in the draft? in 2012? Or is he the guy that's just been kind of bouncing back and forth? I think the stability is going to make him a really good pitcher. Excuse me. I wouldn't be surprised in the least to see him lead the club in ERA this year. I think he's that good. I think that he is the best starting pitcher that the Orioles have drafted since Mike Mussina. That remains to be seen. He has to live up to it, but I think that he has all the potential and all the ability in the world to be great. Here's hoping. The Orioles need him to be great if they want to be a contender this year. The offense is going to lead this club. If their pitchers can come close to what they did in 2014, this is a team that's going to run away with this division. If the pitchers did what they did last year, they're still going to be in contention just because they have all that firepower in the lineup, but they're going to struggle. They're going to have a hard time winning a division, getting a playoff spot. I think this is an above 500 team, but it all falls on the pitching. If the pitching isn't good, then they're up creek without a paddle. Pitching wins championships. They're not willing to go out and spend $30 million a year on guys like Greinke and Cueto and Price, and that's understandable. Those guys are all in their 30s. They have these long albatross contracts, and you have to wonder, is it going to be team friendly? After the third or fourth season. A lot of pitchers come down with arm problems. I don't blame the Orioles for not giving that kind of money to a starter. I mean, you'd like them to. If you'd be happy and celebrating if they did, but I can't really complain about not paying $30 million for somebody who takes the ball every fifth day, who doesn't play every day. $30 million for Miguel Cabrera is a lot of money, but that dude consistently is in the running for batting champion, home run champion, RBI champion, first Triple Crown since '67. That's a guy who, if you can say anybody's worth $30 million, he's worth $30 million. So can I fault the Orioles for not giving $30 million to a pitcher? No. I think that they needed to go out and get more starting pitching. You had a guy like Mike Leake, who you could have gotten. Kazmir. The Kazmir thing, he wanted an opt-out, so they weren't going to do it. We already discussed that. But you look at a guy like Doug Fister, signed with the Astros for $7 million. That's a move you could have made. That's a move you could have done to get him. This is a guy who had one bad season because he was hurt. And you could have given him the money. He would have, in my mind, he is going to have a bounce-back year. He's going to be a key contributor to that Astros team that won a wild card last year and might put them over the top to win that division finally. I really wish that the Orioles would have gone out and gotten another starter or two, especially with how Miguel Gonzalez has looked. I don't have a lot of confidence in that guy this year. God love him for what he did his first 3 years here. But last year was bad, and every time he took to the hill, I kind of expected to see what we saw last year. And it finally caught up to him. Now, again, he was hurt two different stints on the DL last year, so maybe that's what it was, but signs aren't looking good for the spring right now. So we'll see. There's going to be a bunch more shows after this, so we'll get into more stuff as we delve deeper into the spring training as we get closer to opening day and once the regular season gets going. I think the Orioles have a lot to be excited about. I think they have a lot to be worried about too. And I forgot to answer my buddy Sam's question. He asked if, in his words, will Chris Davis hit 50-plus dingers this year? To answer that question, he hit 53 in 2013, he hit 47 last year, and he was robbed a Major League high 5 times, which means he would have had 52 home runs if he hadn't gotten robbed last year. With this lineup and this protection, if he does what he did last year, if he has the same type of season he had last year, I think he'll approach 50 home runs. I don't think you can ever guess that somebody's going to hit 50 in this day and age. I think it's that you're probably going to let the house win if you take a bet that somebody's going to hit 50 home runs. But if anybody in baseball is going to do it, it's going to be Chris Davis. I think he might get the closest out of anybody. But don't be surprised if he hits 40 to 45 this year. So, all right, guys. First show. Let me know what you thought about it. Go ahead to UtahStreetReport.com. Read my blog. I try to post once or twice a week. It's a little difficult in spring training, but we'll get more going with that. Also, you can follow me on Twitter at Paul Valley III. It's at PaulValle with 3 I's after it. Give me a follow. I'm always posting stuff on there. And, thanks for tuning into my first show. Hopefully, it gets better and I'm not as stream of consciousness as I was for this one. This was kind of off the cuff, just something I wanted to do. So, give me your feedback. I'd love to hear it. And, as always, go O's.